So now, like we are also going to talk about this development journalism. It is also kind of human rights journalism, also like kind of peace journalism, also. These are all like kind of related terms. Okay. So I think you all have an idea about like communication for development, right? So you must have studied in your this one paper, and I think your department also you are doing a lot about this development communication and communication for development, right? So today, like let's discuss about it, how this journalism for development cause and how it can be like, feel like more relevant for the context of like countries like India, right? So when we talk about this communication for development, right? So you all have that one, like how this communication for development idea has is export of US, right? We have like imported this idea from US, right? So you all know that in media theories, everything like has like evolved and emerged during the First World War and the Second World War, right? So this historical points like help in shaping this communication discipline as a whole, like communication research also. Most of the theories we are studying now has like from this First World War and Second World War, right? So this when the Second World War like happened, then this US has a lot of these chemical weapons and everything, right? And they don't know like what to do with those chemicals and everything, right? So they need to find a way how to sell those things, right? So the way they found is that communication for development, right? So after this, you can see that after the Second World War, and when this many countries or like kind of got freedom from this colonial masters, right? From France, from Britain, and like from everywhere, right? And then they started having their own national government, right? And then they started like working on their development, right? So that time, that was the perfect time when this US imported, like exported this idea of communication for development, that is this modernization. And you can see that innovation of diffusion, right? And magic multipliers, right? All this concept. So what that concept has to do with these things, right? And you know that then they said that when they are like introducing their chemical fertilizers and chemical, insecticides and pesticides, these people are like kind of they are not used to it. They are with their what you call like organic farming, right? They are like using their organic fertilizers, organic pesticides, and then they are doing it, right? Then they were kind of convincing these people that you better use these chemicals and like fertilizers and pesticides which we are giving you, and you also go for the seeds which we are giving you, right? And then you know that how in Philippines this rice seeds they have like made, and then we also imported that one. We have this rice called like IRPs and all. So those varieties and all being like developed from Philippines, and then we got it. Okay. So this whole huge thing was coming, and then they said that the bottleneck for this westernization or this modernization is their culture. So that's what you could see in the modernization and everything, that their culture is the bottleneck. These people are like not ready to accept our culture because their culture is stopping them from modernization. And you can see this Daniel Lerner, he got a huge project from US, right? Like the government, and then he was like doing his what you call like what was his theory, that book, Daniel Lerner. Can anyone say? I forgot that one. Daniel Lerner, just Google it, like his work. And he was like doing his research in Turkey and in the Middle East, and then he said that why these people are not going for this American consumer products, and why they are like against this modernization and all. Okay, so whole this thing like happened, and then Philippines also this thing is happening. Okay, so there is this idea for development, and then this. As I said that like agriculture also like being like modernized, and they are like kind of started having their like seeds, right? And then we are also like importing that when all these things happen. So that was the time when this idea for communication for development or development journalism were also like infused with it. They said that okay, so if you want to like develop, right, and you want to communicate with the people, and you have to communicate and you have to convince the people that we are like have to be like ready, or we have to brace up for this development, right? So you have to be with us. So for that we can use this media as a magic multiplier, right? And then this whole idea of this public broadcasting, right? So in India, we have this public broadcasting service, right? All India Radio and Television. Likewise, the same for the Singapore, same for Philippines, like everywhere, like Sri Lanka and everywhere. All these new nations, they are all like having their this public service broadcasting and everything. They say that this is for the national cause, right? So the national cause, and we are for the development. So if you want to like support development, you have to support the government policies, and you should not like kind of criticize it. Then this idea of like this authoritarianism in Singapore, and it's a kind of very like authoritarian government, okay? Because you cannot like say anything against the government, then you will be like under trouble. So the journalists also kind of trying to be the propaganda machine of the governments, and they are like reporting it, okay? So that was the thing. But now the development journalism has like kind of evolved in like in various ways, and we are talking about now community media that people have to be like participatory, right? You all know about Paulo Ferreira, so how he was like talking about this participatory thing, right? So how the people should be like they should know like it should come from the people like what they are like wanting and like what they wish, so they have to like work for it, right? So that is the thing. So we can like see those historical things, so how in Philippines this development journalism started, and we will also see this important work by Abhijit Banerjee. Have you heard about him? He's also a Nobel Prize winner, and he got his thing for his randomized control trial. So he did wide research in India, Indonesia, and like all other like Southeast Asian countries, and he come up with his book called Poor Economics. It's a very interesting book. Okay, so there how like a simple information can save lives. So here we will like even though development journalism is like very long, we will just focus on the health and how this information from the journalist can save lives. Also we can see. Okay, and at the end like we can see that how this journalists who are like working with these policy documents have to like read those documents and how they have to make it as a news. So this is the three part of this lecture, okay? So I'll try to like be very quick. So you can understand what I'm saying, right? You can follow it. No? So the development journalism, you can see the first came to use in 1968 in Philippines, right? So it is like talking about that it also like not about the problem but also the solution to punch that hole in the circle, and it's also talking about the humanizing nature of the journalism. So it has to put human beings first and their like development, right? So and in Philippines actually with the support of this Press Foundation for Asia, they have like started one this one news agency called Depth News. What is the Depth News? It is short for Development, Economics and Population News. Okay, to shift the focus of reporting away from specific events to development stories, right? Which was like largely ignored by Western news agency at that time. So that was the time when this Asian countries also come up with a non-aligned movement, and they are also talking about decolonizing and de-westernization, because these are the countries they are mostly affected by the colonialism, right? So British and Dutch and like French and everyone, right? So they are the one like voicing out. So that was the time they were like more conscious about the efforts, and then they started this news agency called Depth News, and through that they started like sending the reporters the news regarding this development. Okay, so the idea is that sensitize reporters to the process of development and then send them to the field to chronicle economic and social challenges and changes then sweeping Asia. So what they is that they will be sending the news through this Depth News, right? And when they get the news, they will like read and then they want to report it. So they will go to the field and they will see that the changes and the challenges that are like happening in respect to this development. Here, the development they are talking about is the economic development. Okay, they are not talking about image development. Just they are focusing on the economic development. So that was the time when we are also like undergoing a lot of changes. Okay, across Asia. So here also you can see the development journalism has been defined as a type of reporting and write on topics related to the process of economic development. Right. So and again this Nora Cabral, the Filipino communication scholar, he is like talking about the art and science of human communication applied to the speedy transformation of a country and the mass of its people from poverty to a dynamic state of economic growth that makes possible greater social equality and the larger fulfillment of the human potential. Here you see the human communication. He is also emphasizing the role of the human rights approach and also human interest stories, and they are also talking about like humanizing the news. So here they are like kind of saying that how the country is being like transformed when this development process is like going on, right? And how the people can be benefit out of these development projects and policies, right? And how it can also lead to greater social equality, right? So that was the thing. And like even in India, we have this green revolution, blue revolution, right? White revolution and all, right? You all know like how this MS Swaminathan who come up with this green revolution, and that was the time when India was like struggling a lot. You know that even during the colonial period, there was this Bengal famine. It was like man-made famine only, right? Because they are like taking away all the resources, and then they are not letting the farmers to cultivate what they want to do, and they are like imposing this what you call this crops which are meant for this commercial crops and all like things, right? So it's like kind of a lot of things are happening, and it was a man-made and it's a colonial made like hunger, right? So people were struggling, and even during the Second World War also, that in India people were like struggling because they are like sending all those rice and everything to the soldiers, right? And then the people are suffering. So that was the period they even introduced this suji, suji, the rava. It was introduced during, it's actually a war food introduced by the British to kind of control the hunger, and they can't like supply rice during that period because they are exporting for the soldiers who are like fighting in the Second World War. So they introduced this rava, and then they encourage people to buy that one, and now it has become a staple of everyone, right? You can see all the cuisines like even in Tamil Nadu or in North India or in Northeast, like wherever you go you can see the suji. Okay, it's a kind of imposed on us like colonial food only, right? So likewise, this green revolution also, that time why they have envisioned that one, even though there is a huge criticism against that one, that it has like stopped this organic farming, and then we went with this what you call this chemicals and fertilizers and insecticides, and it has a huge impact on our environment and everything. But now we can like criticize it, but that time it was the thing like solving like people's hunger and everything, and we are preventing famines. So that was the period, right? So that one we have to like see. And if the famine is not controlled, how it will happen? There is that huge example of Mizoram. In Mizoram, you know that there this bamboo famine happens like every 40 years. So when the bamboo, one variety of bamboo, when it like flowers, what will happen is that more rat population will increase, and because of that, like the rats, if there is a huge rat like kind of Pied Piper, no, there is even a book by Sajal North, Pied Pipers of like Northeast India. So you see like that kind of like rats in like Mizoram, and then they are corrupting, like they are like eating away everything, and people are like left with nothing, right? There is a kind of like, so in 1956, this Mizo people, that time they were part of this Assam government. They were a hill district, right? Tusha Hill district. And then they were like saying that, okay, we are like, kind of predicting a bamboo famine. This is going to happen. So you have to like take care of it. Then that time actually they rejected the thing. They said that it's like very unscientific. How come you can like predict a famine and then this one? It's like very ridiculous. And then they rejected it. And you can see this Times of India and others like in those days how they have reported that one. And later on, what happened that people like suffered and everything, and because of that, during that period, Mizo National Famine Front started, and later on, it has become a group like Mizo Resistance Group, and then they started fighting against the government and everything, and 20 years of insurgency and like lot of things happened. Okay, so you can see that if something is not prevented in the beginning, when people are saying like famine is going to happen, and if the media has listened to it and they have like reported it, it would have, because Amartya Sen has also I have like shown that quote in the previous lecture, right? So how in India like many of the famines has been like stopped because of the free and fair election. But famines have been stopped everywhere else. But in the Northeast, was it like stopped or not? Because Northeast was never, even now like you cannot find the fair representation of Northeast in news in the mainstream media and other parts of like India, right? So that's the thing. So that's what we are saying, that why certain issues to be like reported. Why? So that they can prevent a lot of things, right? Because of that, if they are predicting and they're saying at the time itself, if the media and the government and everyone has worked together, and if they have stopped it, we won't be having that, kind of a very like 20 years of like, struggle by the people and everyone, and even now it's a kind of huge scare, right? The minds of people, right? So that's the thing. So that's what we say, that the power of media is something great. They have the privileged power, right? So that's what we do. So this development journalism is also like kind of break away from the Western journalism, questioning the conventional news values and the objectivity, detachment, and lack of purposiveness that characterize a largely event-driven reporting. Okay, so even you can see that development journalism is also a kind of de-westernizing concept, because in US you cannot find this kind of stories, because like Western media, when we talk about, we are talking about US media. Why we are not talking about European media? Because US media is very highly influential. They are like setting the propaganda and they are setting the agenda what others have to take, right? So even only New York Times, and like the CNN and like other news channels like take up certain issues, or even like UK also like BBC reports only, then we say that okay, this has a national importance or a international importance. Otherwise, it doesn't like get reported, right? So that's what, like, so development journalism itself a kind of de-westernizing and kind of theory for, or a concept that has emerged from the global south. Okay, that is from Asia and Africa and Latin American countries, right? So that's the thing. So here you can see that how these originators of development journalism, they have like kind of utilized it as a tool of authoritarianism. For example, in Philippines, Ferdinand Marcos; in Indonesia, Suharto; and Malaysia, Mahathir Mohamad; and Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew. They all like cherry pick the components of this development journalism and justify the control of the media. You know that even in India, that internal emergency, remember, like during this Indira Gandhi's period, like it was the worst period, right? People like the media doesn't have any freedom, and then they have muscle the freedom of press and everything, right? So it was, and that was the time. You should also remember that Indira Gandhi was coming up with their site, right? Satellite instructional television experiment, right? It's also a development journalism, right? They were like trying to take the development news to the farmers and the public and then the common people there, right? So that's it. So you can see that how it was also kind of controlled. During emergency, when this opposition parties were announced a mass procession, like protest, what she did, she made like she broadcasted Bobby film at that time in the Doordarshan. That time, Bobby was very popular, right? And she used that particular, like she wants the people to be away from that procession, or to away to think from that one. So she just diverted the whole public by broadcasting the film like Bobby in her like Doordarshan. Okay, so even though Doordarshan is part of the government, but it has become the tool of that particular government, right? So that's the thing, like how this development journalism has a huge vision, and then they started this thing, but this public broadcasting services has become the tools of this government propaganda, and like kind of extension of them. And these journalists, they have become a government officers, right? Like in Doordarshan and all India, how they usually like they must have like all this up to date like technology and everything, but they won't like dare to do like much. Whatever the minimum, they will do that one, because they are government servant, right? Like 9 to 5 job, they'll come and they'll do. But the other journalists, when you see like how they'll be like roaming around without like any proper salary and welfare and nothing, right? So that's the difference. So it's not only the story of India; it is the story of the whole Asian countries. Okay, how they have utilized this one. So that's what. So how they were also kind of coming up with this Asian values rhetoric, that is family over self and community over the individual and consensus over confrontation, right? So even in India, they say that the history of press in India, no, when you say that there is this colonial period, because it all started with colonials, right? When the missionaries came, they brought the printing machines, and then they started printing Bibles and everything. And then even the first newspaper was started by a colonial, right? James Augustus Heath, right? So Bengal Gazette, it was started by him, right? Then later on only the other people have like this. So here we can see during the colonial period how they have used this print for this nationalism and also for the freedom struggle, and how they were like using it as effective tool. And then when we are getting this independence, then this new government is like formed. Then the press took a stand that okay, this is our government and we have to support our government, right? And then they were like kind of like whatever the policies like introduced by the government, they were just silent witness, and then they were like kind of making it as a point that we will like only report about the government and we won't like report anything negative, right? So people are not like into that much, because if there is very only the propaganda news, people won't have the urge to read the newspaper also, right? Then this emergency happened, and then there's a lot of pressure on the media, and people also wanted to know what's happening in the country, because this radio and the Doordarshan, it's with the government, so there is no way they can get the news, so they have to depend on the local newspapers. So that was the period. Even this Indian national language newspapers, you could have read that this what's his name, Robin Jeffries' book. You must have like read. It's a book about like India's newspaper revolution. It is talking about how this emergency has like kind of, even there is one chapter on Assam press also. In the northeast, he has like reported only about this Assam press. It's a very important book we have to read. How this Indian language newspapers, because before that it was only English, right? And people were reading that only. Only likes. But this time when this happened, everyone wanted to know about it and they want to. So after that only this growth was there. So we can see that there is this colonial period and post-colonial also, like before emergency and after emergency, and again like LPG, the liberalization, privatization, and globalization that hit in 1990s, and after that how it has changed. Okay, so here also you can see the growth of this development journalism and the need for the development journalism, right? So that's what in the post-colonial period we are like kind of focusing on it. But after this 1990s, this development journalism taken backseat, and only commercialization is taking the front seat, right? So they are all like that page 3, by these newspapers and everything, and how they are not focusing on it. And I think you should also read about this Parambhumi Sainath's book about this. What's his book? Even I have that copy. It's he like reported like about the development things like happening in India, like for example, education, medicine, and everything, and how people are like why, what's the reason that people are not sending their kids to the school, government schools, and how they are like their tradition is stopping them from getting this modern medicine, all those things. So he has like written nicely. So it's a very good example. But even though Sainath is also kind of criticized for his poverty journalism, why he has to like kind of write about poverty, and why he has to show like India as like very poor and all. So that's the thing. So everywhere. So this is the period like this development journalism is also like going on. So the political leaders also use the development journalism as a pretext to restrict the media, which help them to retain their power and influence, right? So radio and television were nationalized, and many journalists were co-opted into becoming civil servants, government spokespersons, or members of political parties in order to support government for patriotic reasons, right? So that's the thing. So here you can see the development journalism with news that is related to a hierarchy of development problems, social, economic, or political of a country's population, and seeks to contribute to self-reliance. Okay, that's the thing. So here also this UNDP defines human development as a process of enlarging people's choices to lead a long and healthy life, to be educated, to enjoy a decent standard of living, right? So additional choices, it says, include political freedom, guaranteed human rights, and self-respect. Again, this whole concept of development journalism is ending with human rights journalism only. So all these things are like totally related to each other. When you talk about like one person's poverty, right? That's what the development journalism is also talking about. Like no one should be there without food. No one should be like suffering with hunger, right? And no one should be like suffering without like house. No one would be like without this what you call like dress or something else, like everything. So they also should have their basic human rights and everything. So that's what this development journalism is also focusing. But here, what is that they are also dealing with this government policies and projects which are meant to safeguard the human rights of the people, right? So that's what here the development journalism. Here we are not talking about the violations, but we are like focusing on the projects and policies. Okay, so that's it. So here you can see that in the beginning how the journalist as nation builder, right? After like independence, they were like seeing this journalist as a nation builder. They have to contribute to the nation building, right? So that's the thing, and also as a watchdog, what's happening, and also as agents of empowerment, right? So how this development journalism have to empower the people, right? And then also about this bottom-up flow of information that communities would make their concerns to government. So the idea of community newspapers and community media has also become or like citizen journalism, right? This also like part of this development journalism. So development journalism dwell on the dimension of democracy, allow the people to talk, and let them to some extent run the media and run more of society. It's a kind of emancipatory journalism. So here you can see that run the media means community media only. The media has to be run by the people, of the people, and for the people, right? That's one. So, and again, in this 1990s, there was this huge Asian financial crisis, right? The people who are like watching this Korean serials, and you know that how in the 1990s Korea was also like struggling with this one, and how they contributed gold to the government and everything. So they were all like struggling, right? So even like India and all the Asian countries also, we are like struggling at that time. So that time only they said that it's not only human development but also good governance. So how there is this transparency is there and the corruption, all those things, like they started working on it. So the development journalism is also focusing on this guardians of transparency, like they are focusing on corruption and other things, right? So and again there are like few experiments about this development journalism. One experiment is Project Chatera that was done by this Hindustan Times, and it's by George Verghese. He was the news editor at that time. What they did is they chose a village called Chatera near Delhi, and then that was, you just imagine, in the 1970s they are like choosing a village, and then they reported about that village for 7 years, and like every week there will be news. Okay, so there is a beautiful piece written by George Verghese in Media Asia on this Project Chatera. It's easily available. You have to read that whole paper. It's a very interesting one. So how in this Project Chatera they have like started like writing about everything. For example, they started writing about the school. They started this. There was no bank at that time, so Hindustan Times like write a news about that one. And then they also brought this banks there, and then they started a nationalized bank there. And again they brought this agriculture. This one they started coming and testing the soil and all, and then they started like recommending like whatever like possible food crops, like for that one and everything. So even for health also they brought doctors and they had a medical camp. When in Hindustan Times it was like English media, and then they are like representing it every week means, then all the people like government officials also paid attention to it, and they started coming to the village, and then they started doing it. I think that is only one thing. Like after that, like there is no other. Nowadays, like villages are not even like represented also, right? So that's the thing. And then this one, you can see that development journalists also they say that it's a tool of social change. Here, not only they are talking about the economic development, they are not only talking about the good governance, but they are also talking about social change, right? Until unless there is the structural change is not there, and you cannot like rectify like certain problems in the society, right? So you have to question that one. So that was the thing. And then what they are saying is that the journalist should have like keen empathy with the grassroots. They are not talking about the sympathy but empathy. You have to like feel. And then you have to inspire the trust in sources across cultures, age, education, gender, race, and class, and then intercultural communication skills and social issues. The journalist should know about the social issues, and then they have the commitment to the social, cultural, and political development of the grassroots. All those things. Then only they can like do justice to their development journalism, right? And then here they are also saying that it's not only limited to presenting facts, but offering a critical explanation of different developmental initiatives introduced by government and non-government agencies. So here, but I think most of the time the journalists are not talking about the policy, right? So for example, if there is a policy like new economic policy in particular this one, right? So how it's like kind of effective, or like what's the pitfalls, and like what are the limitations of it. They are not like focusing on this one, right? So here like they have to talk about this one. For example, development journalism is about eradicating poverty, right? So In India, they made Aadhaar card as mandatory for everyone, right? But there are people who cannot get access to Aadhaar card. Without Aadhaar card, you cannot have a ration card. Without ration card, you cannot get access to the government welfare thing. And even Aadhaar card you need for everything, like to get the government welfare scheme, like health and everything, education, everything, right? So if they don't even have a house, which address they will give. There are like certain problems, like structural problems are there, right? And again, the ideas of ethnicity and identity, all those things, right? So that is also one problem. So the media like should report about that one, right? So why they are making this one as a this mandatory, and how they can help these people like without these facilities, and how we can like improve their like facility to get access to that facility. So all those things only that reporters have to do. Okay, as a development journalist. So their role is like here too. There is no much threat to the journalist also. They can like aram se do their work. They can like talk about those policies and everything. So that's the thing. So it's also the journalist's responsibility to scrutinize and assess the significance of a development project. For example, there is this oil palm project, right? So it's a huge controversial issue, and even in the northeast, it's creating havoc. Even in Mizoram also, they are like affected by this oil palm project. But like again and again, the government is coming up with their project, right? And then this dam projects, you can see like throughout the history of India, you can see like Narmada Bachao Andolan, say like in Arunachal also, like lots of these things are happening, and like how this are like affecting people and how it's like displacing people, right? So how it's also kind of creating new social issues, right? So all those things, like that's what like even though you see the development journalism, it's somehow like very easy, but it's also very political in nature, right? So you have to like criticize the government because their policies and the projects, they are like kind of impacting people's lives. Okay, so that's the thing. So now you can see that when we talk about like government policies and projects, here we have this SDG, right? Sustainable Development Goals. There are like 17 goals, and they are saying that by 2030 or 2040, we have to realize these things. But you see, quality education, gender equality, or like zero hunger, no poverty. And then you see, like in India, like every year they are saying that even last week there was a report that there is like more people who are like falling into like hunger. There is this, they are like becoming like more poor. There is like it's everything is very expensive for them to like this one. Then how you will eradicate like zero hunger, right? And then even like clean water and sanitation, that is also like where like everywhere it's like kind of, even last week in this chat which I do, what I've seen one woman is like washing her hand in this toxic water, no? So how it was toxic, and then they fell into this one. So that is also like all these issues, like even if someone wants to be a development journalist, even if they focus on one issue and in their one region, then they can like do a lot. So if one person can say, okay, I will be only focusing on clean water and sanitation, you can see that how our rivers are being like polluted, how waste management issues are there, right? And then this, I think there are so many campaigns are also happening by these NGOs and everything, right? And then we can talk about like this one, what do you call this? Many people are not getting this water also, right? And we can also say that sometimes like certain projects are also helping people. For example, they say Jal Jeevan Mission project. It's like reaching to all the people, right? And it's reaching like everyone coming up with this money. It's okay if there is like positive, you have to report about it, and if there is any negative also, you have to report about it. So even if one journalist, if they are like just I will like talk about like one, then even they can find a lot of issue. They can be specialized on that one, right? And even for journalists also to be like specialist in these things, it can also help them in getting more fellowships and everything, right? Because there are like n number of fellowships and like projects for this journalist also. They can apply for it and they can do it, right? So they can like focus on that one, like climate change or like whatever. And if they like keep on reporting about it, like kind of specialized, then it can like help them in like reaching like better heights also, right? So in a selfish way also they can like focus on this thing, right? So that's what like your selfishness can also help for the larger public, right? So that's the thing. So you can like focus on this one. And even like life on land and life below water, all those things. So development journalism must tell the story of what is going on. It's not only like talking about what is right, but it's also about what is going on. So now I will just focus on the health communication. What's the time now? Okay, so I'll try to complete in another minute. So I have like taken this one from this poor economics book only. If you have read that one, then it would be like repetitive. For others, it might be interesting. So here they are talking about like how the preventive care should be the focus of health communication. For example, in Mizoram, like in one district, there is this infant mortality rate is high, okay, and it is like higher than the national average also. And then there are like certain researchers they are saying that these pregnant mothers they are taking this kuwa. Kuwa means this bitter nut, and then they also smoke. Okay, so the betel nut they are taking it and then they are also smoking, and they are saying that even if they reduce the intake of those betel nut and then smoking, no, it can like do a lot to this what you call the infant mortality rate can come down. Okay, so you can say that it's not that you have to talk about like big things, even very small thing, but if you are like consistently like reporting about it and trying to create awareness, and if it like keep on coming in the newspaper, some NGO will take care of it, some international organization will take care of it, and then they can also contribute to that one. So that should be the role of the journalist. Okay, so preventive, like you have to prevent like that one instead of like kind of. So in that like he has like shared so many case studies across the world, and in Kenya they said the children who were given deworming pills, okay, and they like in school for 2 years, went to school longer and earned as young adults 20% more than children in comparable school who received deworming for just 1 year. So even we are like we don't mind about this deworming thing, right? We thought that it's a very simple thing they are giving in this Anganwadi and everything. My mother-in-law is Anganwadi, used to be Anganwadi teacher. So she used to like give my daughters like every 6 months this deworming pill like very religiously. I used to think like why she is, but after reading the book, yeah, like it has a huge impact. They are saying that in Kenya, like it's a randomized control trial only. They have done a very detailed research with Abhijit Banerjee and his wife, and then only they have found this one. Okay, so how these children who are getting deworming pills for more than 1 year, they are like staying in school for longer. And if they are in school for longer, they are also earning good as an adult, right? So it has a huge impact. So this is what the development journalist has to do. And then like the path forward is not better big thinking, but thinking small. Okay. So that's the thing. Improving the lives of the people measurably and consistently. It's a primary matter of making a series of small change. Okay, so most of the time it is only the lack of information about their benefits the poor people cannot afford that, right? So that's what. So instead of just media is saying that okay, this many people are not having their Aadhaar cards, but how we are like sensitizing them and like getting those Aadhaar cards and like getting them access to the welfare, right? So that should be the priority of the system. So they might think that it's like normal information, but even the small information can help like millions of people. Okay, so that's the thing. So another one thing, in 1966 to 67, there was a rice price like it was very high in West Bengal. So the West Bengal chief minister, when somebody asked like, what should we do? Then he said that instead of eating rice, let them eat like more vegetables, no? But eating more vegetables is also good only. But at that time, the way he said, and he's a this one, no, the politician, and then if he's saying that one, then it would be like kind of very odd, right? So it was like kind of a very huge controversy. And again, the same time, in I think in France, actually, on the Antonio Parmenter, he actually they wanted to even potato, it's a colonial thing only. Even for us, we got by this Irish people only. Even there is a quote about like Mizoram saying that instead of Mizo people domesticating the potato domesticated them. Okay, so how it has become like so much part of their life, right? Likewise, so even this that guy when he introduced the potato, people were resisting. We don't want to have like potato. But what he did is he introduced so many recipes. He gave like how to eat that one, right? Then people like started eating that one. So that's what like sometimes media has also know how to pack those information and how to make the people like take it. So that is how they are like putting their like story. Okay, that storytelling thing. It is very important. So that's what you can see that how they are having this shepherd's pie and all those things. Even freedom fries, the one introduced by that guy. And then that's what this the both authors are saying that you should focus on moonshot solutions such as instead of moonshot solutions, better go for the simple and inexpensive programs. Okay, where he's saying that even like giving chlorine powder to many African villages, it is helping them, and even giving this mosquito nets, subsidized rate, it's helping people, right? So that's what. But in India, like the press, they are like very foolish. They will be saying that only because of the welfare schemes, people are like lazy and people don't know what to do. So the government shouldn't do that. Let them like work. But like this welfare schemes and this government, subsidies on certain things, it really helps people to like use that. Okay, instead of just telling people that okay, to prevent HIV/AIDS, you have to use, be protected. But for that, instead of just saying that, you should keep those, in like various places, and it has to be like accessible. Instead of just saying that it is like against our culture or something else, right? That kind of thing. So the media has to like focus on those things, right? The thing like very there are like certain like small interventions that can change people's lives. So the media should like popularize that one. So and again, it's not only just the information, but after the media's information, it will also be like, kind of taken care by the governments and then the policy makers and someone else, and they will also like work on it. Okay, so the media cannot alone bring things, but media can play a major role in bringing all other stakeholders together to put an end to certain issues. Okay, so here also like mostly the poor often lack critical pieces of information and believe things that are not true. And again, in India, we have this huge issue of misinformation, right? Even during COVID, there were like lot of this thing. Even Donald Trump said, no, you can drink this disinfectant, then you will be like cured. And then in Iran, they said that if you drink liquor, then you can be like cured, right? Likewise, in India also, there were like lot of these things, during this COVID, they were all like saying that our ginger and turmeric is the thing, and you have to drink like turmeric thing, and it has created a disease. Actually, there is the for human beings you have to take only certain limit of turmeric, and it should not exceed that limit. Now, how we are doing it, it's fine. In food and all, it's fine. That is enough. But they are like again drinking it as a water and everything, putting it, and it has created a liver disease among the people for taking like overtaking of those things. So misinformation also killing people. So media has to kind of verify the things, right? They should be the fact checkers and everything, but they should not fall for it, right? Instead of like reporting on those things. So that is also one important role of the journalist nowadays. Okay, so how people should not like fall for it, because that can be like more damaging. Even like if they are not getting information, it's fine, but if they are getting a half-baked knowledge, no, that is like more dangerous. People will go for those things, right? So that's the thing. And you can see that media all the time saying if you drink this much coffee, then you will live longer. And then chocolate, if you eat more chocolate, then this thing. These are all kind of tidbits. It must be written in a very different way, but they might be using it for the sensationalism, and then this thumbnail journalism for YouTube. No, they will be like using those things. So we have to like the journalist has to be like sensitive on that one, like instead of putting those things. Okay, so that's what. And so, but the simple piece of information makes a big difference. That's what we are saying, that the journalist has the role to give out those information. Okay, even during this dengue, I think dengue is there everywhere, right? Every time, like during the season, we will be like badly affected. But in Tamil Nadu and all, it's like one dengue cases come, like they will like keep on writing about that, and then they will say that you have to check, like no, this water is being like kind of filled up. You have to see a proper outlet, and you shouldn't let any water to be like clogged anywhere else, and you remove all those like unwanted waste and all everything, and then they'll be like going door to door and doing this and all. So the media can even like work on that one, right? The journalists can just even before the season comes, like even before the incident like start, like people getting affected, when it like start this one, they can like start writing about that one. So the prevention, that one can be the role of the development journalism. Okay, so these are like certain case studies of development journalism. You can see that sand quarrying in Ukhrul, and then 44 localities in Shillong drink unsafe water. So that one and all, I think they have like try to help the fight over who will pay hospital bills of India's poor. These are like certain examples, okay? There will be like n number of examples also. You can see that one, okay? And then reporting on policy. So, okay, like we are getting information, everything, but there are these government policy documents are there. They are like so long. It might be around 200, 300, 1000 pages are there. How you are going to navigate those things. So there are like certain strategies. And even this is a kind of science writing only, right? Because these are all like, for example, a policy on climate change. Government may have like 1000 pages and you have to read everything about it, right? And there might be like so many scientific jargons will be there. So you should know how to like understand that one. If you are not understanding and how you will like write, no, so that is also one challenge. And again, they are saying that numerous types of policies can shape scientific research, and they can be shaped by scientific findings in turn. So the media, and again, the one thing is that now the journalists they also have this social media, right? So, for example, this one journalist like Chandrasekhar, she has like written a lot about this kind of like science articles, okay, like the kind of global the what you call climate change articles she is like writing it, and in that like she has said that I always like follow the Twitter. For example, for one of the story, like she was like keep on following this hashtag high seas treaty and biodiversity beyond national jurisdiction, okay. So she was like kind of following all the hashtags, and from there like she's trying to make. For example, if there is someone is even she has written about air pollution in Delhi. So if there is air pollution hashtag like Delhi air pollution, so she can like follow that one, and then you will get a lot of information. Okay, and then they also have to read this trade publications for the industries they cover. For example, if they are like covering about chemical industries, if they are like covering about like mining, or if they are like covering about some dams and all. So all these companies they are also having their own magazines, right? For example, newsletters and everything. So she's saying that even you have to read those things also. Then only you will get to know. You cannot just like go and like write about it. You have to do a lot of things. Okay, that is there. And then making up documents and sources of bias. Again, she is saying that you have to immerse yourself in the relevant scientific literature, right? And you have to read the associated policy documents, right? So it's not only one document, the associated, the relevant documents you have to like read about that one, right? And then mostly you can like Google a policy, and then you can like read it in the government websites also, right? That one. And then you also have to go well beyond the basic text of law. You have to be like very in depth, and you have to follow the paper trail and everything, track down these documents and everything, right? So and there is also saying that, and again there will be some person like who is like doing that research for so long, and academics come into for right. So for example, there might be one person who is like his entire research is on flooding in Brahmaputra, right? He must be like doing it for 25, 30 years as a professor. So he must have like n number of documents and all sort of things. So even if you like get a bite from him and then like you include him as a news source, it's going to change the whole thing. So even this academic issues also plays a major role. So you can always like take it. For example, if there is a landslide, or if there is a flood, or if there is pollution or like whatever, then you can like talk to those people, right? That one. And again, it also like helps to follow the money. Sometimes like this one you have to see that who is going to benefit out of this particular policy, right? And which company is going to get more out of this one. So you can also follow that one. Then you can get it. So here you can see like certain things I have given. Can ecotourism bolster conservation efforts? Actually, there is also one research. It says that this ecotourism can help in like conservation, right? So if you can like read this kind of relevant documents, and then you can also report for your local context. You can change how you can like become a this one also. And then again, who is going to be more affected by this particular policy, right? So for example, if it is like high sea treaty, it might be the fishermen, right? There are like so many projects are coming up, right? So if it is a coastal project, then fishermen will be like deeply affected. If it is a dam project, the farmers will be like the mostly affected, right? So likewise, you have to see who is the most vulnerable and who is like mostly be affected by this particular project. Then you have to focus on that one, okay? And then And again, like whatever your sources is saying, you shouldn't like rely on that one also. You have to always counter check. Fact verification is very, very important, right? That one also. And again, mm, yeah. Mm. When you are like mostly the journalists also like mostly the local journalists are not reporting on that one. So mostly the people from like Delhi or someone will here or even from Guwahati someone will be going to like Dimapur or Aizawl or somewhere else and then you will be like doing it, right? So it might be totally different. Even though you are from Northeast, that culture will be like totally different. So when you go like you have to always like talk with the local journalist and who is well known about that particular thing and then only you have to work on it. Then only you can do proper justice. Okay, so that's what. So development journalism is all about reporting. It's not only reporting about everyday people's like daily experiences regarding food, water, and all those things, but it also like kind of have a deeper implications with their like larger social and cultural environment, right? And so the development journalist has also have to like report what is wrong, right? And they also have to focus on nation building and everything, and other at the same time they have to focus on this the good governance, right? And they also have to focus on the social change, right? All those things be the keywords for this development journalism, right? And again, they also not only dealing with these normal violations and all, but they have to focus on these government policies and projects, right? And reporting that one, they have to be do a lot of research. They have to do a lot of investigative research, right? So they have to do their homework. Then only they can do proper justice. So this is the thing. Any other questions?